going to count our blessings this morning as we sing this song. Think about all the blessings God has given you. When upon life's billows you are tempest tossed, when you are discouraged thinking all is lost, count your many blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God has done. Are you ever burdened with the load of prayer? Does the cross seem heavy you are called to bear? Count your many blessings, every doubt will fly, and you will be singing as the days go by. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God has done. When you look at others with their lands and gold, think that Christ has promised you his wealth untold. Count your many blessings, money cannot buy. Your reward in heaven, know your home on high. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God has done. So amid the conflict, whether great or small, do not be discouraged, God is over all. Count your many blessings, angels will attend, help and comfort give you till your journey's end. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God has done. Thank you, dear Jesus, for this day. Thank you for this opportunity to be here, dear God. I pray you would just bless each and every one here this morning. And we just want to praise you this morning. You are good. God is so good. God is so good. God is so good. He's so good to me. Jesus.
Hi, I'm Riley.
I'm Becca.
Today we want to did you know that today is Orphan Sunday? Today we want to share with you something that is near and dear to my heart. Currently, 3 of my siblings have been affected by the orphan crisis. So when I heard about Ornaments for Orphans cause, I was very happy.
Ornaments for Orphans is a charity that helps with orphan prevention. Today, more orphans than you would imagine still have at least one living parent. In areas of extreme poverty, parents are left with the heartbreaking choice of watching their child starve to death, go with life-saving medical treatments, or placing their child for adoption in hopes that they will receive the food care that they need to survive.
Ornaments for Orphans is a fair trade social enterprise dedicated to providing critical support for orphans and vulnerable children in Africa. They use ethical and substantial practices to advance their society by creating jobs, fighting poverty, preserving families, and empowering impoverished communities. 100% of their profits are invested back into the community that they work with through trade and charity.
The fair trade items they sell are handcrafted by local artisans that are employed by Ornaments for Orphans. They pay them a reliable income that provides them with food, housing, clothing, and the medications they need. Because of OFRO's efforts and those that support them, they are continually improving their standard of living, their education, and their future.
Widows Co-op. Behind every Ornaments for Orphans stuffed animal ornament is a Ugandan widow working to support her family. Widows are prone to exploitation, and the children of these widows are most likely to become orphans. But these artisan women are protecting themselves and their children by using their skills to run a successful business.
Yiko is a man disabled by childhood polio. He is an accomplished artisan and entrepreneur who supports his family through his craft business. In a culture where disability is often stigmatized, Yiko exemplifies perseverance and character. He advocates for the rights of those who are disabled and educates others about the worth of their disabled individuals. He often says, "Disability is not inability." Ornaments for Orphan is happy to offer Yiko's Ugandan bark cloth hut nativity, Ugandan homestead, and African hut ornament.
The little ways we can help out, like purchasing an ornament to decorate a Christmas tree, really do make a huge impact in people's lives, like Yiko and the Widows Co-op.
We have set up a tree out in the lobby filled with some of the different ornaments that OFRO has to offer. At the end of the service today, we will be out there by the tree to help you in finding the perfect ornament for your tree this year and answer any of the questions you may have.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Have a great day.
All of us will reach a crossroads in life, a decision that has to be made. Some can be small and insignificant. Others seem like they could shape the course of our entire lives. How can we know the will of God? How can we correctly choose the path He has set out for us? And what if we make the wrong decision? We spend sleepless nights and days filled with anxiety when we place these burdens upon ourselves. Often we become isolated, feeling completely alone in finding the right answer. Sometimes we're tempted to rush into a decision. Other times we'd rather delay indefinitely. But for those who call Him Father, for those who believe in the power of His name. He provides everything we need to follow His will. He gives us His word as a compass and inspiration. Those who live according to Scripture will always follow in His footsteps. He blesses us with wise counsel through His church and the leaders He has set in place. He hears our every prayer, granting peace and wisdom to those who ask. His very Spirit dwells in us, a still small voice that guides from within our hearts. And in His perfect timing, He will open doors. He will clear the way forward. And no matter the path you choose, you are never alone. He will walk beside you and enfold you with His love, from now until the end of eternity. So trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight.
If you can't tell, it's raining and it's freezing during that time, and I'm in a pool. I don't do well in cold water, but it was worth it. So, yeah, that was an awesome experience to witness those baptisms and be able to be part of it, and we want to be able to share that with you all as their family, their extended family here. So we're going to move into a time of offering, of giving back. And so I just thank you so much for being with us already this morning as the ushers come forward. I'm going to say a prayer, and we'll continue on with our offering. So. Don't be shy. It's okay. Father God, thank you so much for who you are, Lord. I thank you for just everything you've given us. I thank you for your many blessings that you continue to pour out upon this church and upon its people. And God, I pray that we just continue to do what we are meant to do, what we are supposed to do, and to be able to give back all that we can, Lord, our time, our energy, our effort, and even our finances, God. And I thank you so much for how you've already blessed us, God. And you move within this church in so many different ways, God, some subtle, some noticed and well-known ways, God. But no matter what, Lord, we just pray that we continue to serve you, we continue to live for you, and then we continue to have your will in our sights, and we continue to fulfill that. So I pray you just be with this time of offering, that you just bless it, Father God, and we lift it up to you. We give it back to you, Father God, for all the many things that you've already given us. So thank you so much for all that you do for us and how you continue to work on our lives. We thank you, we love you, and we praise you. In Jesus' name, amen.
This song is a very special song to me. It has been for many years, since I was probably a teenager. And it was written by a very dear friend of mine who I've adopted as my brother. And his mother actually attends here at Porterfield. But it's called Lord, I Need You. And says, help me, Lord, to make the right decisions. Give me a plain path, but also give me the strength it takes to walk it. Lord, I know you called me for a purpose. And without your help, I would surely fall. Help me, Lord, to make the right decisions. And Lord, please hear me when I call. 'Cause Lord, I need you every day. And every day, Lord, I feel you. And at times it's hard for one like me to see how you can keep on forgiving. Then you remind me what you did on Calvary. And Lord, I need you every day. And I need your guidance every step of the way. Give me, Lord, a plain path and the strength it takes to walk it. 'Cause Lord, I need you every day. Lord, I need you every day. And I need your guidance every step of the way. Give me, Lord, just a plain path and the strength it takes to walk it. 'Cause Lord, I need you every day. Give me, Lord, a plain path and the strength it takes to walk it. 'Cause Lord, I need you every day.
I'm assuming I'm on? Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure I did this right.
Hey, Philip, I'm going to show you a video first.
Okay. I didn't see that on the thing. Oh, I didn't see that.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Philip, you were right. I knew it. All right. Your name's on there twice, and I got confused. It's you Sunday. It's okay.
Turn this back on. All right. I'm going to find a music stand without anything on it. Or, thank you. No, this one has stuff on it too. Thank you. Ooh. All right, good morning. On behalf of the youth, I can hopefully say that we're glad to be here and we're glad to show you all these things and present all these things that we have for you. So good morning, and I just want to say thanks for being here. All right, my name is Philip Sammons, and I'll be giving you your lesson today. And so I want to talk about something that's really important to me and something that's really has shown itself pretty evident in my life. And so it's just something that's important to me that I'm glad and I'm happy to share with you guys. And today I'm going to be talking about purpose. Now, not exactly life purpose or more specifically, not about finding your life purpose or what is it, all right? That's something that most likely you are praying to God individually, all right? Today I'm going to be talking more importantly and more specifically about feeling purposeful, all right? And so to do that, we need two base things, okay? One of them is in Jeremiah 29:11, and so here's where I'm going to start. It says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." And by the way, every verse I'm going to be doing is from NIV, in case you're wondering. It's all of them going to be from NIV just because that's the most common thing. I just figured I went with majority rules today, okay? So this is the first thing we need to know, is God has plans for us. He has these plans for us that are so great and so big and so meaningful that we can't even begin to mentally comprehend them. They are bigger than our greatest imaginations. And he has these plans for us. And so that's the first thing we need to know. All right? The second thing we need to know is in Colossians 1:16. And it says, "For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him." And so here's the second thing we need to know. All right? If you don't know me, I like to connect the dots, okay? So to speak. So if you could imagine this is literally saying he has created everything, all right? He's created me. He's created you. He's created this entire facility, every single thing. And the last little statement, if everything has been created through him and for him, more importantly, focusing on the for him, then therefore everything we do and everything we have should always lead back to him. And so to give you kind of an example, I like to think of this as a cycle, okay? If you could imagine God taking something, right, and he's bringing it down to earth for us, right? And if therefore everything should lead back to him. This is the cycle you want, because I'm going to bring up another thing here in just a second. This is the cycle you want. If he's providing something for you, you want to continue to live for him. Because as long as you're living for him, he's going to continue his half of the cycle without any question. It's our choice whether or not to complete that link. It's our choice whether or not to live for his plans that I just talked about. So these are the two things we know. He has plans for us, and we need to be choosing to live that for him, all right? Now here's where I get into the sometimes we don't. And more importantly, I just want to let you know, all of that I'm talking about today is why that happens, why this happens, sometimes why we struggle with it, and why we struggle living for him, or maybe we lose our fire and our passion for living for him, and why this happens, as well as hopefully by the end of this, I can help steer you in the other direction. And this won't apply to all of you. Maybe one thing I say applies to one person, another thing I say applies to another person. But just keep that in mind. So I want to go, actually I don't want to move to the next verse yet. So one of the reasons this can happen is, let's say, and I'm going to give you a job example, but I want you to know this can happen in any activity in your entire life. But let's say you're a plumber, because why not? And let's say you plumb for a living. I don't know if that's a word, but let's just say you plumb for a living, okay? And you may find yourself on the daily thinking, I'm a plumber. That's great. But where does that fit into God's plan? And so if you're constantly in this state of thinking, where does my little puzzle piece even fit into the 20 trillion puzzle that is God's plan, right? Where do I fit in that? Or even worse, do I fit in anywhere? Is what I'm doing even important? Do I even matter? Where do I fall into making a difference, impacting someone else's life, or even in a general statement, living for God? Where do I fit in that? And it's through thinking this negative thought that we shouldn't be, we kind of trick ourselves into a false sense of insignificance. And when you trick yourself into this false sense of insignificance, it leads to what's known as burnout. If you don't know what burnout is, basically, the psychology of burnout is like, we're okay with putting in this much effort as long as we're getting this much out of it. And when I say getting this much out of it, it could be pay, like, you work this much for your job and you get paid this much, that's good. If you're putting this much into your relationship with Christ, you feel that it's that important. But oftentimes, when we're putting this much effort in, or we feel, more importantly for the lesson, we feel like we're putting in this much effort, and we feel like it's only this important, then you're going to end up dropping the whole thing. So that's what burnout is. And this is what that leads to. It's tricking yourself into, subconsciously, you don't even realize you're doing it, but realizing that you start to live your day as if it's a normal 9 to 5 day, and you go to work, and then you go to sleep, and then you go back to work the next day, and you go to sleep, and you start living your days as if they aren't as important as they really are. And this is what happens. And because that happens, we get burnout, and then we drop the whole thing without even realizing it. It slowly happens. It doesn't just happen all at once, all right? It's not like you just wake up one day and you're like, oh, I feel insignificant, so I'm just going to stop living for God. That's not what happens. What happens is it slowly deteriorates throughout time, and this is what causes if you've ever heard it talked about, the wavering in our relationship with Christ, all right? It's not good. It shouldn't happen, but it does, because we're human. One event could happen, and then bam, you're on fire for God. And then the next, it's obviously not the next day, then it deteriorates, all right, to where you just don't feel significant anymore, and then another event happens, and then you're on fire. This shouldn't happen, but it does, all right? And it's not healthy for our relationship with Christ to be wavering all the time back and forth, but it does happen. And I'm just bringing this to your attention. This is one of the things that can cause us to stop living for God. The second thing is if we're too fearful and controlling. We live in a world that's ever revolving and ever changing, and we truly live in a world that literally never stands still. Oh, there went a moment. There went another one. Oh, there went that opportunity. I missed the deadline for that. I'll never get the chance again. This is the world we live in, all right? And this can be some simple things such as going to a party or to hang out with your friends and maybe you missed that, or something more important like college. This can do with anything. This is the type of world we live in. And so the second thing that happens is that as this thing is approaching, we look at it and we begin to worry about it. And we look at ourselves and we're like, God, do you want me to take this moment as it's going by? Do you want me to take this opportunity? Is this what you want for me, or do you not want me to take this? And you start to freak out about it. And so last second, you grab onto it, right? And then as another one's coming by, you grab onto that one, right? And so what we're doing is we're holding onto these situations because we're so worried about them going wrong, all right? More importantly, are they what we should have? But we're so worried about one of these things going wrong, or something going wrong in our life. And, you know, there's lots of things that if something goes wrong, it could affect our entire lives. And this is what we're so worried about. And if we're so concerned with hanging on to these things, we're not giving God even a chance to be a part of the equation here. If we're holding on to these situations, and this is part of our natural human habits, okay? We like to be in control of the situation, all right? And we all know that. We like to be in control of the situation. We like for things to be stable. We like for us to know exactly what's going on, okay? And it's this type of fear and this type of worry that can be detrimental. Because if we're so in control of a situation, then we're not letting God be any part of it. And see, that's the issue. We're so worried about one of these moments going wrong that we're taking it and we're trying to provide for ourselves so much. Now, let me make it clear. There is a healthy amount. There is a healthy amount. All right, as something's coming by, it's perfectly, it is, you're supposed to, I'm not saying be lazy. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying as something's coming by, you should just be like, that doesn't matter. Who cares, all right? My basement's flooded and the roof is on fire. You know, God will take care of it. No, that's not the mentality you should have, okay? But as something's coming by, it's okay to be attentive and careful about it, all right? That's perfectly fine. But when you start to become fearful, that's when it becomes unhealthy, and that's when we naturally start to want to take control. And that's what the issue is here. Something that was said to me not too long ago, actually very recently, that I really needed to hear. It's something I already knew, but just the reminder was really great, all right? It's something I totally needed to hear that day. But someone said to me, if you're worrying and you're becoming scared about something, you're being fearful. And if you're not being fearful, if you are being fearful, if you are being fearful, you're not being faithful. And like, this is exactly what I needed to hear. If we're being fearful and we're being controlling about the situations, we're not being faithful to let go and know that God's going to take care of it. And there are things that we need to do, but at the same time, we need to let God be a part of the equation. Because if we're not, we're going to end up doing lots of things bad. And that's where I want to get into the next verse. Ecclesiastes 3, verses 1 through 8. It's a lot of reading, all right? It says, there is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. There's a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build. It goes on. A time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep, a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent, a time to speak, a time to love, a time to hate, a time for war, and a time for peace. What does this all mean? Well, I like to look at it as this, all right? There's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens, okay? That is God telling us that we don't have to worry about missing out on one of these moments or missing out on something that we feel is so important, because these are worldly things, by the way. When I'm saying a moment or an opportunity, these are the worldly things I'm talking about that are really only problems here on earth, all right? We need to not worry about these things for one simple reason. This is God telling us that you're going to get to experience every single one of these things. You're going to get to experience a time to be born, a time to die, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep, a time to laugh. You're going to get to experience every single one of those things that was just mentioned. And this kind of goes along with, if you've ever heard the verse about not being anxious for things. We need to not be so worried about missing out on one of these things, because God tells us we're going to get to experience all of them. The thing that we need to know is you're going to get to experience them in different times or at different moments than other people are going to. I like to think of it as a timeline, right? So he's making your whole life, right? Your timeline is not going to be like anyone else's. It's unique. And he's given you like this moment here and that moment there. And I want this event to happen because that's going to mold you into a person, right? And then this activity here, right? But if we're so concerned about one of them, let's say we start worrying about the third thing, we're going to grab the third thing before we even got the first thing. And this is what happens. So as things are flying by, we're so worried and so controlling about them that sometimes we can take something that we weren't supposed to experience until later. Or even worse, we can take something that we weren't supposed to experience in the first place. And this throws off everything. And it does nothing but destroy and hurt our relationship with Christ. So again, just realize the worry does nothing to you. It does nothing good for you. You're going to get experience with every single possible emotion and type of moment on the entire planet that could possibly happen. God says it here. We are going to get to experience these things. And so I want to move on to Jeremiah 32:19. This says, "Great are your purposes and mighty are your deeds. Your eyes are open to the ways of all mankind, and you reward each person according to their conduct and as their deeds deserve." Now I'm going to give you the context here because this was kind of taken out of context. The context here is that this is describing God, all right? This is talking about God, all right? Great are his purposes and mighty are his deeds. His eyes are open to the ways of all mankind, and he rewards each person according to their conduct and as their deeds deserve. This is the context here. It's describing God. But here's what we need to know. I want to focus a lot on this first sentence. Great are your purposes and mighty are your deeds. If you have trouble feeling insignificant, or you feel, the first thing I talked about is insignificance. The second thing I told you about the whole times going by is that you feel like your relationship, it just isn't on fire right now, or you're just not on fire for God, or you feel like it's just every day is going by as if it's a normal day and it's not important. This is where this is the turnaround, okay? So I've explained the two base knowledges we need to know. Now I've explained the problem, I've explained why this happens. Now I'm on to my last point. Great are his purposes and mighty are his deeds. It says it clear as day right here. Again, because I like to connect dots, if we're connecting the dots, how does God work here on this planet? I don't actually know. Nobody knows, all right? But if I had to just give you an example, less than 1% of the time are what us as humans like to call miracles, all right? These miracles being things where God just, in our perception of things, just snaps his fingers and things happen and it's completely unexplainable to us at all, right? This rarely ever happens in comparison to how much the second thing happens. A majority of the time, God works through you. He works through you and people around you. He works through people. We are his soldiers, right? We are soldiers of God. That's kind of our purpose here. We're serving him, we're living for him. That is our purpose. God works through you and people around you a majority of the time. And I don't even mean just like 51%. I mean like 90%, okay? He works through people. And if he works through people, connecting the dots here, if his purposes are great and his deeds are mighty, then so is every single move you make, every step you take, every word you speak, every action you do matters. If his purposes are great and his deeds are mighty, then so is every one of your purposes and deeds in your entire life. Stop doing things as if they don't matter. Stop living every day as if it's just another day, all right? Because again, this is where we trick ourselves into a false sense of insignificance, and we begin to do things in a minuscule way. We live in a world where we do everything in such a minuscule way. We do. all of your purposes and all your deeds are great and mighty, and God gives you these purposes. He calls upon your name to carry out deeds for him. He calls upon you for things, and it's your choice whether or not to answer that call. And if you're going to answer that call, my one thing that I just want you to remember, if there's anything you even remember at all that I said today, is that your purposes are great and your deeds are mighty, because they are his purposes and they're his deeds too. He gives you them. He calls upon you to carry them out. So don't do anything in a minuscule way as if it doesn't matter. We live in a world where if I were to, I'm just giving you an example. You hear about these kind of stories all the time on the news, all right? Where someone did something that didn't matter that much to them, but it was life-changing to someone else, all right? You hear about these stories. Let's just say, for example, I sat at lunch with a kid who didn't have anyone to sit with, right? The world we live in is a world where if I did that, it wouldn't mean that much to me, but to him it might mean the world. But he doesn't let me know that it mattered that much to him. Now I'm just giving you a total example. You do something that doesn't matter to you. It's minuscule to you, all right? Let's say you give someone a couple bucks that maybe needed it, all right? That's a couple bucks is nothing to you. It's nothing to you. It wouldn't even feed you for a day. A couple bucks is minuscule, but to them, it might mean the world. But we live in a world where he or she that maybe you gave a couple bucks to wouldn't tell you how much it mattered to them. Just, I don't know why. Ask psychology. I don't know why, but just we live in a world where we commonly don't express how much something meant to us as often as we should. And therefore, you feel like what you did was minuscule and that it didn't matter. And therefore, next time you do it again as if it's minuscule and as it doesn't matter that much. Or even worse, you don't do it again because you did this and you felt like it was that important, and so you just don't want to do it again because it didn't feel like it was important. Everything you do makes such a bigger difference than you can possibly imagine. I mean, if I were to go all the way back to the beginning, he has plans for us, and I said those plans were not even mentally, it wasn't even possible for us to comprehend how great everything we do is. We can't comprehend the amount of impact that we make in other people's lives. And for this reason, sometimes we feel as if what we do isn't important. And that's all I want to end, and I have a couple more things I'm going to say, but that's the whole point of this whole thing, is that you need to stop doing things as if they don't matter, because every single little thing you do on the planet is multiplied by probably 10 times as important to someone else. Take the ornaments for orphans, for example. $10 or $15. What like $10 or $15 for most of the ornaments? Most of the ornaments are $10 or $15. $10 or $15, again, depending on your family size. For some of you, wouldn't even feed your family size for a day. $10 or $15, again, is minuscule to you. It's nothing. It really isn't. $10 or $15 is nothing. $10 or $15, and I went upon myself and I looked up all the conversions rate and stuff, and I took it upon myself to really take this seriously when I say $10 or $15 provides, depending on what country you're in, it provides about 1.5 to about 2 1/3 months worth of supplies to one of these families of a widow and an orphan, or more than just one orphan, all right? $10 or $15 can supply 1.5 to 2 1/3 months of supplies. And I'm not talking just food. I'm talking food, water, shelter, clothing, education, like everything. 1.5 to 2 1/3 months. $10 or $15 hardly supply you for a day. I don't think it's a coincidence. You gotta love voice cracks. I don't think it's a coincidence that we live in a country where our monetary values are multiplied in other countries that need it more. I don't think it's a coincidence, because quite literally, if you were to look at our situation in the country we live in right now, if anything, God has made it unbelievably easy for us to make a difference. He really has. We live in a country where every dollar is probably multiplied by, I mean, I'm just totally guessing here, but like times 10 in other countries, all right? It really is. I don't think it's a coincidence that we live in the US where something like $10 is so tiny to us, is so great to someone else. This is God making it so easy for you to make an impact. He really has. He's made it so easy for us to make a difference and so easy for us to make an impact in the world. So don't do anything anymore as if it isn't great and mighty, because it is. Moving on to the next verse. And so James 2:16 and 17 says, if one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm and well fed, but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself is not accompanied by action, is dead. Faith without action is dead. It really is. And so take this today as the ornaments. I hope you can take this today as we're giving you the opportunity to do something. An amount of money that is so minuscule to you is literally life-saving to someone else. We are giving you the opportunity to have faith with action. And moving on to James 1:27, religion that our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. Again, we're giving you the option to look after orphans and widows in their distress. We're giving you opportunity. Oftentimes, we don't take the opportunities that are presented to us because, again, we feel insignificant, and hopefully I've helped try and break that feeling of insignificance, so that if you're going to buy an ornament today, don't do it as if it's not a big deal. Buy an ornament and then be like, man, I just changed someone's world. Because that's how you should feel. So that next time it comes along, you don't feel like not doing it again. Hopefully, you'll realize how much of an impact that you made the first time, and then that'll continue, and this is how change happens. This is how change happens. We stop thinking that we're insignificant, and we start doing what we should do. This is how change happens. And this is why everything you do is so purposeful and so meaningful. Thank you all very much. Thanks for listening.
Hello everybody, my name is Philip Sammons, and I am the creator and leader of Now I See. Now I See is a social project aimed to progress and boost followers' faith in their walk with God, as well as to develop and bring others into what is the start of their loving and everlasting relationship with Christ through the sharing, documenting, and producing of others' godly encounters. So what this is this is your chance, this is your opportunity for your voice to be heard. This is your opportunity to share your godly encounters with possibly the world. And quite literally, if anything, this is you, the people, this is your project more than it probably is ours. As literally this project is going to turn into whatever you come to us with to share. And with that said, it doesn't work without you. It doesn't work without you. And so, with all of that said, I'm very excited for whatever it is that you guys have to bring to us. And thank you all so very much. And this is Now I See.